Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Across the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and around the state of Alaska on this your favorite radio station and or translator, FM translator, not AM translators, because they don't make them, FM translators. But you probably already knew that and don't care. Good morning and welcome to the program. It is the Thursday edition of the Michael Dukes Show. And gotta say, a little pleased with myself from yesterday's broadcast. It was fun and entertaining. It's been quite a while since we've done a head-to-head debate on the program, and I was trying to think back. It must have been, gosh, it must have been close to a dozen years, 15 years maybe, since we've had a head-to-head debate on the program. And of course, for those of you on radio, it didn't really matter, but this is the first time we were able to actually broadcast it on Facebook and YouTube as well, with all the video and timers up and everything. I was pretty happy with that. It worked out really well. I'd love to do some more head-to-head debates, because I think it becomes very clear when you get candidates side by side like that, as to which candidate you should be choosing. And so was excited to see that. Would love to see I would love to see some more of that, including the one out here in the Matsu area between Doug Massey and Mike Shower. I would love to see that. But alas, it's probably not to be, as I have not heard back from Doug Massey's campaign at all. So it would be fun. But, it is what it is. Today on the program, we're back to solo. We're back to solo candidates. And we're going to talk about more stuff. Oh, there's more stuff than you can shake a fish stick at. That's what's coming up here this morning. David Nelson, representative for House District 18, is going to come in and talk about his reelection bid. And also in hour 2, Senator Mia Costello will be joining us. And, of course, she is running in a very contentious race for reelection in the newly formed or newly reformed district. She's now facing off against former Senator Matt Clayman. And that race is a little bit nasty. So anyway, we'll talk about that here this morning as well. Next week, Representative Kevin, candidate for, sorry, I've already crowned him. He's representative. Candidate for State House Kevin McKinley will be joining us, as well as Ruben McNeil, Delana Johnson, Forrest Wolf, Liz Vasquez. The following week, Jamie Allard, Chris By, and more. We've still got more. We're going to sneak Mike Shower in there somewhere, probably a week from maybe next week or the week after next, because I've been kind of putting it off. I've been kind of putting off having Mike Shower back on the program because I wanted to give Doug Massey the chance to respond or to do something. And unfortunately, the only responding that he's doing is criticizing Must Read Alaska when they post articles about him, apparently. That apparently got his goat. But we'll have to see. We will have to see what happens with that. All right, so before we jump into this with David Nelson here in another, 9-10 minutes or so, we got some time for some headlines. We'll talk about that. Maybe we'll take a couple comments from the chat room or something and talk about that. I don't know. But the headlines are here, and we're ready to go. Yes, and we will have, I forgot, Representative Kevin McCabe is going to be on the program here probably as well maybe next week or a week after, before Election Day. Let's just put it that way. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. My calendar is so full at this point. I've never seen my calendar be so full. And it's created a bit of a monster for me. Okay, this is how I'm doing it from now on, quite honestly, because it's nice. It's nice. All right. So headlines, news. What else is going on? I mean, we got the 6 schools in Anchorage closing, and there is the typical fervor that you'd expect around that. We could talk about that. The debate happened last night. I thought there were some zingers on both sides. But I think by this time, if you have not decided who you're electing for governor, okay. I think it's just like, okay. This was a story. I did want to touch on this, simply because I feel like I was there at the beginning. I feel like I was there at the very beginning. Mike Coons, who many of you have heard about or heard from. He's been on this program before. He was a volunteer and started the Association of Mature American Conservatives, AMAC. AMAC is it's the conservative version of AARP, right? Because the AARP is, if you read their literature and what they put out and the things that they support, they're a fairly liberal organization, right? And as I rapidly approached the age of 55, where I would become available to become an AARP member, I was never going to do that simply because why would I give them money? Because they support causes that I don't believe in. Anyway, Mike Coons discovered AMAC, and he was so impressed with this organization that he reached out to AMAC, and because he was getting tired of receiving all the crappy stuff from AARP, and since there was no chapters in Alaska at the time, he got a hold of AMAC and he volunteered to get the organization set up here in the state of Alaska, which he did. Big organization in the Mat-Su. He worked on down in the Kenai. He worked up in Fairbanks. He did all these other things around the state, and he created a pretty growing concern here in the state of Alaska. Well, apparently AMAC fired him. I mean, he's a volunteer, so they can't, but they dismissed him. He was the guy that started it, and they dismissed him. Now they don't endorse candidates, but the AMAC is active in political issues and other things. According to Must Read Alaska, Coons became cross-threaded with a national organization this year when his chapter planned to endorse ballot measure 1, the Constitutional Convention. National leaders fired him over that, Coons said, in a phone call he received while he was out hunting. So, okay. Yeah, so they, this all went on. And the Mat-Su chapter, by the way, is the largest chapter in the state. It has something like 400 members or something. And so they had a meeting on Saturday, and Coons made a motion to dissolve the chapter of AMAC in the Mat-Su, and they voted to dissolve it. I mean, they're like, okay. Now, what I found ironic was, they said after the motion to dissolve the chapter and after a robust discussion for an hour, the group voted overwhelmingly to do so, even though headquarters in Florida had told the group it was not permitted to dissolve. Oh, screw you. Oh, screw you. We voluntarily organized, and now you're saying you're not permitted to dissolve. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mike Coons has been very active, and I admired him. He contacted the program when he initially reached out, and in fact, we interviewed him on the show right when he got started, trying to help him drum up some support for AMAC in Alaska. And I find it a little, I find this a little crazy and creepy. I mean, first of all, that they would fire him, but second of all, that they would tell you that you can't dissolve. Okay. Well, okay. Excuse me. All right. So that was one of the stories that I wanted to talk about today, and I guess my hat's off to Mike Coons for doing everything that he did and all that other stuff. Many of you don't care about this story because it's going on in Anchorage, but I just want to say that it's a lot of the similar things that are happening around the state, and that, of course, is being the talk about the budget deficit shortfall for the school districts in Anchorage, $68 million, just a mere $68 million in the city of and the municipality of Anchorage. But I did want to, there's a couple little points in here. First of all, they're starting the conversation about closing 6 schools, right? Which the reaction, well, people, the outrage, the angst, okay. I mean, this is what happens when you don't have enough money. I'm just pointing that out. You can't have everything, people. But what I found interesting about this article is that there were some hard truths that were laid out in this article from KTUU. Talking about the superintendent, Jarrett Bryant, who comes in and he's, talking about we're starting the discussion and here are the schools that we're suggesting and we need to talk about it. This is an incredibly emotional and painful topic to hear. Oh, it puts an immense strain on the community. So does immense taxes. That also puts a strain on the community. But I get you. A couple things, couple hard truths. First of all, Bryant said that the influx of federal COVID-19 funding gave the district a false sense of security. But they've admitted in past articles that this has been a problem that's been brewing for the past 5 or 6 years. But that COVID money gave them a false sense of security. Here's the deeper thing, though. Bryant noted that the number of kindergartners enrolled in Anchorage schools has declined by 20% over the last 5 years. He also noted a 20% decrease in the total newborns in Anchorage. He said the number of students enrolled in Anchorage schools will continue on a steep and steady decline. I would love to see a graph and a chart of the decrease of school enrollment, 20% over the last 5 years of kindergartners, is what he's saying. I would love to see the actual increase with inflation. And I'm not just talking about the BSA. I'm talking about all school expenditures over the last 5 years, because I guarantee you it looks like a greater than, less than thing, where the school enrollment continues to decline and the expenditures continue to go up and ask for more. They're now serving 20% less in just the kindergarten alone. I mean, the overall school enrollment has dropped, but the bigger number there is the decrease in the number of total newborns in the Anchorage area, because we're facing a declining birth rate in the United States overall. We are declining as a nation on the birth rate side. Population growth is going to get some of us because you're not putting more people into the system, so to speak. So I found that little tidbit interesting. The other thing that was, of course, the obligatory statement from the superintendent was, the reality is our schools are being underfunded, and it was never addressed by our state government. What? The second reality is that our district has been given insufficient and unstable funding from the state of Alaska for years, and it's hurting our schools. Even if our enrollment had not declined, $1 does not stretch as far as 2022 as it did in 2017. That's true for everyone, I guess, but if you've got fewer students, you just can't make this stuff up, people. You cannot make this stuff up. This is what they're all about. And you could see the continuing message of, but the schools, they need all the help. You can't. Why do you hate children? Why do you hate children? I don't. They're delicious with barbecue sauce. Now, what do you want me to say? Of course I love children. But I also want everyone to be fiscally responsible. I mean, is that too much to ask? Really? All right, David Nelson's up next. We got more coming up. The Michael Duke Show. Common Sense Radio.
What is that?
Common Sense.
Regularly heard on American radio.
Michael Duke Show.
Radio.
Okay, in the break, ready to go, doing our thing. I see David Nelson is in the green room, ready to be brought on board the program, and we're going to talk with him here in just a hot second. I can see him down there. I'm just going back. Donna corrected me. It's age 50 for I could join AARP now? Well, geez, why didn't I do that? I mean, man, I should have done that at 50. Why wait 5 years to give him the finger? I could give him the finger right now. Blurt out. Oh, just blurt out. All right. Let's see. Oh, more money in education. Everybody district voting for Mike Shower. We don't need to hear from Massey to know what we want to keep Shower. Let's go. What? Let's. I'm sorry, I'm reading Harold's comment here. I can't even repeat it on the radio. Let's go ape poop on social media about Doug Massey looking to strip down the PFD to $250 because that is what Massey is all about. I'm sure it probably is. It's probably another reason why he doesn't want to appear on the program because those are the kind of questions that I would like to ask. Thank you, Donna, on the heads up, though, on the 50 thing. If it pleases the crown, we would like to dissolve and go about our humble life. I know, Brian, when I read that, I was just like, oh, I will give you the finger so hard right now. You can't dissolve. Wait, we voluntarily came together and now you're saying, no, you filthy peasants, you're locked in place and you will not move until we say you can. No, sorry. What else we got here? Yes, it's a huge ask. It requires courage. Okay. If enrollment is going down, should the cost be going down as well? E.g., less need for the teachers? That is how every other industry works. Why not school? Too much infrastructure? No, the problem is, Kevin, is that they can't fire anybody. So the costs continue to increase. And then they need more administration and overhead to take care of the ever-expanding costs. And thus is born the justification for while we have decreasing enrollment, we have increasing costs. That's just the way it is. Have a nice day. All right, David Nelson. I've bloviated enough. Let's see if we get him into the broadcast here and make sure that everything's working, microphones and everything. Good morning, sir. How are you doing this morning?
Morning. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm just making sure we got everything good here. I'm adjusting your volume just a tad bit. You ready to dive into all this bad stuff here and get everything squared away?
I'd be delighted to.
Okay, good. Ironically enough, I didn't get to it this morning, but you saw that there was a big article in the ADN this morning about the race in your district. Did you see that?
No, I did not.
Yeah. So it's it's a battle. You're the David versus the Goliath. The two Democrats were going to duke it out and rank. They're going to kumbaya and rank each other. And it should be an interesting. Definitely should be an interesting race. I'm ready to talk to you about it. But yeah, so as long as you're ready to go, we're all ready to go.
Perfect. Let's go for it.
Okay. All right, good. I'm going to put you back in the green room for just a second here while I get things ready. We are, just over 60 seconds out. And yeah, if you got a little bit of I was going to just say that. I wasn't going to say it like Harold said it in the chat room. But if you got a little bit more of a light source or a little bit more light in the room, that would be good too, because it's a little dark on my end. So just FYI. All right, we're going to dive into this here. Get ready to go. The Michael Duke Show. Like and share. Like and follow, share, just share it. I don't care. Don't do any of the other stuff. Don't follow, don't do anything. But at least share the show. And you could share it from any of the platforms you want. Facebook, YouTube, Twitch. You could just hit the share button or share the URL or do whatever. Just, you don't even have to bother with all the other stuff. But at least share it out there. Get more people involved in it. All right. You ready to go? Let's do this thing. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. I got 8 seconds. I don't know what to talk about, so I'm just going to talk about my favorite song, which is coming up right now. Let's get it on. Here we go. Let's do it. Okay, welcome back to the program. It is the Michael Duke Show, broadcasting live across the state of Alaska. Radio stations, FM translators, on the internet, we're everywhere. We're omnipresent. It is the new media empire. No, it's not. It's just me. All right, we're going to jump into it now, get into our candidates debate. Today, our first guest of the show is David Nelson, candidate for House District. It's 18. Okay, I almost said the old one. It's 18. Like I said, it takes me 10 years to get used to the House names, and then they change them. So David Nelson joins us this morning to discuss his candidacy, and we welcome him to the program. Good morning, sir. How are you doing?
Well, it's a beautiful morning, and I'm excited to be on the show.
Well, I appreciate you coming on board and joining us this morning. So I guess, David, first and foremost, let's talk a little bit about you, who you are, where you come from, for folks who may have never heard about you. What does District 18 cover? Who might be listening that might be in your district? Give us a little bit of a rundown there.
Yeah, perfect. So thank you, first off, for having me on the show. It's great to be here. 2 years ago, I remember calling in a lot, and you were always such a great host. For those who don't know me, my name is David Nelson. I'm running for State House out in District 18, which with the new lines, it's a north of Fifth Avenue downtown, all of Government Hill, all of J-Bear, and then a little slice of Muldoon out in East Anchorage.
That's interesting. That was one of the things that I found most interesting is that they included in the redistricting, they grouped all of Government Hill into the district, and then they cut out a big chunk of Muldoon. So you used to represent more of that area. And it's almost like and of course, all of Government Hill is more moderate to, it's more blue than the district. The district is definitely, the balancing is kind of changing on this. You only beat your opponent in the last go round by what, like 95 votes or something. So it was a pretty close race. And now you're facing off against two candidates. We've had Cliff Grow on. Lynn Frank never responded to us, so we've already had Cliff Grow on. But so you're facing off against two of these candidates, and now your district is a little bluer and everything else. It's got to be an interesting thing to deal with. Tell us a little bit about your background. Who you are, where you came from, and what you bring to the table here for folks who might want to vote for you.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely interesting. District 15, the area I currently represent, is all of northeast Muldoon, and then the Air Force side of J-Bear. And with the redistricting, it kind of got moved around. So I have something like 13% of my old district. So I kind of feel honored. I kind of got put into a little bit of an area just a block south of me is a brand new district. But, I'm running with it, and I'm glad the entirety of J-Bear is now a complete district.
Right.
Yeah.
So your position, what made you run originally? I mean, I remember we've had this conversation before, but it's been quite a while since you've been on the program. So let's talk for a minute about why you decided to run for State House to begin with. I mean, obviously there was a lot of turmoil in your district over some of the things that were happening at the time. Give us, I think if I remember, didn't you just kind of run on a lark to begin with, and then kind of the wheels fell off the bus for the previous candidate?
No, so it was over 2 years ago. I was living out here in East Anchorage, and my girlfriend, who also lives in the district, was jogging down Boundary Avenue right next to Centennial Park, and she was doing that to train for a 5K. And while she was jogging down there, a homeless individual jumps out of the forested area and tries to talk to her, and proceeds to chase her down the street. And luckily, a taxi cab was driving nearby and let her jump in and protected her for a while. But she got so shaken up by the incident. And so we're like, okay, hey, we're going to go to the police. We're going to see what we can do. It should be an open and shut case. We know who, what, when, where. This shouldn't be happening out in Anchorage. And we went to the police. They kind of just told us to go pound sand. There wasn't much that they could do. So I got really ticked off, and I didn't want to do what most of my generation does, which is just post on Facebook or Twitter and expect change to happen from there. So I said, okay, hey, I'm going to put my name in the hat, and I'm going to go talk to neighbors and try to change something from there. And, it was, I was expecting to get 2 votes, but going out there and talking to people and running against Representative Ledoux at the time, got a lot of steam behind me and ended up winning in August and in November.
Yeah, no, it's a definitely an interesting. Now, with your district being totally different, this is going to be a different fight. But let's talk about where, what Representative David Nelson stands for. I'm assuming you've walked the new district and talked to the new people and talked to your new constituency and everything else. So, what are the constituents concerned about? I mean, obviously, crime. You just talked about crime is probably a big one. The PFD, the economy, the size and scope of government, ranked choice voting, inflation. What are the big topics that you're finding your constituents are concerned about?
Yeah, so crime is definitely up there. The PFD, taxes is something that people are fearful of, especially out in East Anchorage and Government Hill. You look at the price of gas over here in East Anchorage; it can get as high as 5.50. You go out to Costco, it might be a little bit cheaper than that. But working everyday families not necessarily can afford an income tax or a sales tax added on top of that. And then when you get out to the military base, talking to soldiers and their families out there, there's military centric problems that they have out there. Something as like spousal reciprocity. So having a spouse in the military, you come up here from the lower 48. It's a lot harder for someone to take their license, like a nursing license or architecture license, to come up here even for a couple of years and start working. And so there's a lot of fears that soldiers and their spouses have when they're PCSing to different parts of their time.
Right, exactly. The Oh, sorry, I was just thinking about are we going to see a little bit more involvement from Jay Bear? Do you think in this go around? I mean, we've seen kind of an increase in aptitude from a lot of people. A lot of the districts seem to be more motivated and everything else. Historically, military bases have not been a great source for local votes. I don't know if it's because the people who live there feel like they're kind of divorced from the rest of the population or not, but you don't always see a lot of interaction. Are people more motivated on the base right now, do you think, to participate in what's going on locally?
I think they are. It's difficult just with some of the federal regulations. You can't necessarily go door knocking or have campaign events out on post. So it's difficult for campaigns to get out there and to really motivate a lot of people to get excited about getting out and voting. But I think my campaign's done a really good job at engaging through the ways that we can soldiers and their spouses on post. And I think we're going to see a good uptick of voter participation out on JBear.
Yeah. You said that they didn't have an appetite for taxes. And does that mean on top of the tax that they're already paying on their PFD? I mean, what's the reaction on the PFD? I mean, you say they talk about it. Are most of your constituents looking for the full statutory PFD, or are they looking for some kind of compromise?
No, I mean, you look at some of the different areas, especially out here in Muldoon. You can go to one of the mobile home parks or some of the condos off of Muldoon, and you talk to some people and you say, "Hey, what's your thoughts on the PFD? Where are you kind of looking at?" And they want to put the PFD and they want to stop using it as a political football that takes all the air out of the room and actually stops us from accomplishing anything long term or long lasting. But you look at someone who's getting by, and you try to say, hey, let's what's your thoughts on the PFD? And when someone says, well, it's something that I use to get through the year. I don't use it for a vacation fund or to put a down payment on a snow machine. I use it, $3,200. That's 3 rent payments I could use right there.
Right, right. No, I mean, I think that's this idea that somehow the people are just taking their PFD and trips to Hawaii, big screen TVs, hookers and blow, whatever it is that they're using it on. That seems to be first and foremost, it's their money. So I guess we'll talk about your position on the PFD. Is the PFD the people's money, or is it government money in your mind?
It's definitely the people's money. I mean, that's where it was started off from, and that's where it continues to be.
You have now spent a couple of years in the legislature and have kind of seen the dysfunction. I mean, you were just talking about some of the same things that I've said, the political football, they're batting it back and forth across the net, sucking up all the oxygen in the room. I think that there's a cadre in the legislature especially those who have been kind of the good old boys club, the leadership, people who've been there for years and years and years, who don't want to change the fact that the PFD's become the political football, because every time, I mean, they go into crisis and they're able to do, they're never, first of all, they're never going to face the issue of we are not, we've got a spending problem. We've got a revenue problem because we have a spending problem. And they never have to face that if the PFD is still this wiffle ball that they're batting back and forth across the net. I think that there's people in there who have a vested interest in making sure that the PFD issue is not solved. What do you say?
Yeah, I mean, when I've been down there, down to Juneau for the past couple of years, it was definitely an eye-opening experience to kind of the inside baseball of Juneau and some of the people that are down there. I mean, you can definitely notice who's down there to actually try to get some things done, and concerned about the long-term impact of the state. And there's a couple of people that are more focused on their own self-interest or what's going to be good for them come November or whatnot. And it's difficult to accomplish anything when have that mindset. And there's good people on both sides that are willing to come together and work and accomplish something. But it's hard to get long-term impacts done with some of the people out there.
Now, you support a full statutory PFD. Am I correct on that? You support following the law as written?
Yeah, I mean, I voted multiple times. It was 10 times for the full statutory PFD, and voted to get the largest one this time around.
And do you believe that, I guess the biggest problem we have right now is we've got conflicting laws. Ever since 2017, when they put in the SB 26, the POMV law, now we've got a law that basically conflicts with the statutory formula, and yet nobody's willing to take on and fix the statutory formula, one or the other. So there's been a real talk now and a hue and a cry, and several candidates have talked about, well, if we're not going to fix the statutory PFD, the statutory formula, then we should just repeal SB 26 and the POMV law and go back to the way it was working before all this mess happened. What are your thoughts on that? Would you be in favor of repealing SB 26 and the POMV law and going back to the way it was before?
I think where we first need to start off at is having a tough new spending cap in our state constitution. This is kind of one of these deals where, if when oil is up to $100, $110 a barrel, it's tough to try to have that fiscal conservative fiscal policy. When everyone kind of has their pet projects or wants to spend a crazy amount, and then when oil dips back down, tightening the belt, we don't really have that much savings to start off with. So I think that's going to be the first kind of focus that this new legislature needs to focus on, is putting a tough new spending cap in the state constitution.
One of the senators was quoted, who's not returning to the Senate, by the way. One of the senators was quoted as saying, "We've got so much money, we don't know what to do with it all," because of the $110 a barrel oil, which again is so excruciatingly short-sighted. I don't even know where to begin on that, but I do want to come back to that here in just a second. David Nelson is our guest, GOP candidate for House District 18, which is one of the newer districts, now been redistricted. We're going to continue our conversations with him here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show continues. Don't forget, coming up in hour 2, Senator Mia Costello will be joining us, and we'll have more conversations about what's happening in the legislature. The Michael Duke Show continues. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
Our light, our guide, and our trusted friend. Michael Duke Show.
Okay, in the break right now, David Nelson continues with us as our guest. David, I like to kind of change gears in the commercial break so we don't repeat ourselves for the podcast listeners and people later on. So let's shift gears just a little bit, if you can stick with me.
Sure.
What are your thoughts after being in the legislature now? You told us why you ran. You decided to do it. You were able to do it and overcome it. That's all great and gravy. Then you went down there. What's your reaction to what things were like? I mean, what your expectations were versus the reality of what happened when you get down there. Give us a little bit of a flavor of what your thoughts are and how the legislature has operated over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, that's for sure. There's like I was saying earlier, there's a group of people down there that are dedicated public servants on both sides of the aisle that want to get things done and want to see how we can make a true impact for a lot of Alaskans. And then there's some people that are a little more concerned about their reelection or kind of climbing that next ring on the ladder. And it's tough to try to accomplish things with that.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of dysfunction in there for sure. Some of it, I think, again, my feeling is some of it's intentional because out of that confusion, certain people can grab the reins and steer the bus because of the confusion and the conflict down there. You are facing, of course, ranked choice voting has thrown an interesting curveball into this year because it's not just you and one other opponent facing off in the general election. You now have two Democrats you're facing off against, and of course, under the ranked choice voting scheme, they could either split the vote amongst themselves, but that doesn't really matter because then in round two, those votes can combine and yada, yada, yada. What are your thoughts on ranked choice voting and how this is all kind of coming together in this specific race?
I'm holding my breath on ranked choice voting. I did have some concerns with it, especially in the special primary where you had some districts with a really high rejection rate on their ballots. And I've only just recently seen some, teaching from the Division of Elections, mailers or, YouTube or Facebook ads teaching people how to properly fill out their ballot. So, we'll see how that works out. It's pretty easy for people on District 18. You only got to put one person down. That's David Nelson.
Right. It's pretty easy from your side of the world for sure. Ranking the red means ranking one person, right? It's the
Yeah.
it's the blue side that's going to be interesting for sure as we go through this. What was the most surprising thing, as you look back in the last 2 years in Juneau and the contentiousness, being part of the minority and watching the majority kind of ramrod stuff through on the House side and even the dysfunction in the Senate with what's going on there with the supposed majority caucus? What was the most surprising thing that you saw in the last couple of years that kind of, I don't know, shocked you or opened your eyes, made you go, whoa, when you saw it? What can you think of there?
Well, there's been a couple things, some that I referenced earlier. There is quite amount of bipartisanship to be done. I mean, I had, even as a minority member and as a freshman, I got a couple pieces of legislation passed. House Bill 125, which is employment preference for military spouses. And that passed overwhelmingly, both in the House and in the Senate. We had a resolution passed honoring Hmong veterans. So for as much contention as there is, there's quite amount of bipartisan that still exists out in the legislature.
Well, it's surprising. Some of those bills are less contentious, right? I mean, some of them are like, oh yeah, we can all kumbaya behind this, among veterans, the supporting military spouses. I mean, those are kind of no-brainer things. But the second you step the toe out of line into something that's more deeply rooted in fiscal policy or something like that, oh, then things get nasty.
Well, you'd be surprised. Even things like having a resolution. I know Representative Rauscher had one that was supporting Anwar. It was one of the very few first votes. And you think it would have unanimous support in both houses. But from what I remember, there was a couple members of the House that rejected it. So it's, some things you think should be pretty simple for Alaska actually get some surprising no votes.
Yeah, no, it is kind of shocking. All right, David Nelson, hold the line for me for just a second. We're going to rejoin here in just a moment and be ready to get things put together here. Folks, if you do me a favor, share the show. Yeah, I'm not going to ask you to follow. I'm not going to ask you to ring the bell on YouTube. I'm not going to ask you to subscribe because you never listen to me anyway. But if you do anything, if you would at least share the show with your social media feeds, And you can share it from YouTube or Facebook or even Twitch. You can share it from any one of those positions, and we'll get more folks involved in the conversation. We'd love to hear from you guys. Go out there and get it done. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Here we go. Everybody got so used to hearing the bell yesterday because we were using it for the debate. I forgot to reset the timer on that, so it wouldn't do that. So anyway, I gotta fix that. Hi guys, how you doing? You guys ready to get this done? We're continuing now with David Nelson, candidate for State House in District 18. And we continue our discussions with him right now to just to see where he stands on the legislative side of things. David, one of the talking points that seems to have become very prevalent, very dominant in the discussion right now is the discussion on education, and specifically this new talking point that, well, we've just ignored education. We haven't been funding it, and we've underfunded education, in fact, because we haven't adjusted. The base student allocation's only gone up 5% in the last 5 years, and inflation is at 17%. And so we really need, if you care about the children, you'll spend more on education. Of course, nobody ever talks about BSA being just the base of it. And of course, all the excess funding that goes on top of that. What are your thoughts on, and of course, education is the second largest component of our budget, the second largest spend in the budget items. So what's your thought currently on education and this idea that somehow we have been failing to fund it properly? And what are your thoughts going forward on it?
Yeah, I think we made some great inroads with education in the last couple of years in the Alaska legislature. I mean, the Senator Begich from downtown Anchorage got passed the Alaska Reads Act, which I think is going to actually improve Alaska education. It's a small BSA increase, but it also looks at kind of a check on the education system in Alaska, and I think that's going to lead to some improvements in the long term. And then also the forward funding of education, I think, is going to do an improvement. So next year, when we come back down to Juneau, we can actually have some really tough conversations without having a pressing timeline of sending out pink slips to teachers, or having that kind of threatening clock kind of overtaking us. Now we have a forward funding of education, so we can actually take a hard look at some of the books we have and funding for K through 12 education, and see what ways we can improve and what ways we can look at.
Well, I mean, and that's all well and good, but I mean, my question is, I guess my bigger question is this simply a funding issue? I mean, look at the scholastic achievements in the state. I mean, we are 48th, 49th, 50th in almost everything, right? I mean, reading, math, science. Our graduation rates, 3 out of 4 kids graduate, meaning 1 in 4 don't graduate. And even those that graduate have got to take remedial courses to be able to get up to speed just to go to college. And so my question is the answer just more money, or is something fundamentally busted in the system and we need to address that? Should there be metrics, performance metrics and other things to be able to justify these expenditures? I mean, we were just talking about the Anchorage School District, and they're saying 20% fewer enrolled in kindergarten plus 20% birth rate drop in Anchorage, and yet we need more money to go. I mean, is money the answer, or is there something fundamentally flawed in what we're doing?
Well, I think, performance metrics are definitely needed, and that was part of the Alaska Reads Act. And it is definitely showing. I mean, from how bad COVID was, there was some positive outlooks where parents started to get more involved with their kids' education. Now you're seeing a rise of not only kids going to private school, but also kids being homeschooled, where parents said, hey, I think I can do a better job at teaching than what ASD is doing. And so they brought their kids or continue to take their kids out from, COVID, and now, having them at a homeschool or a collection of schools.
Right, the brick and mortar. I mean, I've always said that that's been the one silver lining that I've seen in the COVID situation is that people became educated that it wasn't that difficult to homeschool your children. The fear mongering tactics we used to hear were all untrue, and people were like, "Well, this is actually pretty easy." Which brings me to the next question: should school choice be a big issue in the coming session? Should we be talking about vouchers? Should we be talking about a backpack educational funding where the funding follows the student rather than following the school? I mean, should we be giving parents that choice? And if they decide to homeschool their kids or put them in a learning pod or put them in a magnet school or create some kind of new, should the money be following that?
I think so. I mean, looking at some of the ways the past couple of years that parents have looked at their kids' education, I mean, I think that's where it's going, and we'll see, with who's going to be in charge in this new legislature, what kind of priorities they set.
The final question before we get to closing thoughts here is on a fiscal plan. We saw the fiscal policy working group come together, a very disseparate group of people with opposing philosophies and everything else. And yet at the end of the day, they all came together in a unanimous decision on a fiscal plan that they proposed to the legislature, which then was just arbitrarily stuffed into a drawer and really never discussed at all. Are you familiar with the fiscal policy working group's plan, and do you think it could be used, and would you be using it as a roadmap for a fiscal policy in the coming years here?
Yeah, I was disappointed with the leadership in the House, kind of as you described, stuffing it in a drawer and kind of forgetting about it. A lot of Alaskans put their heart and soul into creating that. Now, I think, it definitely needed to have some hearings, and there were some things I liked in there, some things I didn't. But if we're going to, talk about a long-term fiscal plan, I mean, we have to have something that people at least agree on and we know is going to pass if it moves on through, not just some great ideologue idea that's never going to go anywhere in the House or the Senate. So, I if I were to get back in, I think that's a great roadmap to start off at, and I think that is what we're going to be using to solve some of these problems that Alaskans are facing and that have plagued the legislature in the past couple of years.
I guess I lied. I have one more question before we go to final thoughts here. The you know
You sound like a politician.
I know it was one of those things. Well, you answer questions quicker than I expected, and so I still have a minute or two here. We come back to the idea of majorities, minorities, the organization. I mean, organization in the legislature has been a hot mess the last 2 years, right? I mean, the House had a hard time with Gary Knopp and all that kind of stuff, and then even after that, in the next session, and then you were back in the minority again. It took the Senate a month to organize and everything else. What's your position on organization? Are you sticking? You have stuck with the minority. Are you going to continue to stick with a minority, or would you entertain the idea of entering into because you've talked a lot about bipartisanship? Is there entering into a coalition majority in the House? What say you?
I mean, at this point, I'm just focused on my race. I don't know what the legislature is going to look like, so I can't necessarily say, right now what that's going to be.
But philosophically, I mean, are you opposed to that, or would you rather stick with your guns with your Republican colleagues, or are you, again, if something happened and reached across the aisle, would you even entertain that?
It would have to be certain parameters, but I kind of look at my Republican colleagues as ones that are serious about solving Alaska's issues. I mean, they're the ones that we held pretty strong on getting this bipartisan fiscal policy working group, like you were talking about earlier. And I think, if you're looking at people who are serious about accomplishing long-term solutions for the state, I think that's going to be one that I prioritize.
David Nelson's our guest, candidate for District 18 in the State House. David, we got about a minute and a half here. I'm going to give you just closing thoughts, your elevator pitch, why people should vote for you, where they find out about you. Go ahead.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much. So I'm David Nelson. I'm running for State House out here in District 18. And I would be honored to have your vote. I'm running on three things, putting a tough new spending cap in the state constitution, saying no to reckless new tax schemes, and then constitutionalizing the PFD. And I'm a dedicated public servant, and I've been here for 2 years, and I hope to earn your vote to continue to serve in the legislature. If you live out in House District 18, I've probably already talked to you or knocked on your door. But if you'd like to learn more about me, you can go to my website, nelsonforalaska.com. And there's contact information, or on my Facebook page, Nelson for Alaska. And I'd be delighted to talk to you more about it.
David Nelson, our guest, again, Republican candidate for House District 18, the new district as it's redrawn. We're going to continue in just a moment. David, thanks. Hold the line for just a second. Coming up in hour 2, Senator Mia Costello joins us. As she's in the green room, we're ready to go. We'll have more. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. All right, David, I always like to give candidates one more bite at the apple when we finish up and go into the commercial break, just in case there was something that I didn't catch, a topic that I didn't hit. Any final thoughts? This is your final bite here. I'll give you a couple minutes here. Anything else that you wanted to add, or maybe a topic we didn't get to? Now's your time to sound off about it.
Well, you did touch on it a little bit. For the first time in a long time, J-Bear is finally under one House district. And there's a lot of soldiers out here. And I know that listen to your show, that's extremely important that they get out to vote. Traditionally, soldiers and their spouses and family members that live out on J-Bear only come out to vote on general elections and presidential years. But we're starting to see an upswing of voter participation out there. So I hope that everyone listening, is voting out on J-Bear, and everyone across Alaska as well. But you kind of want to look for someone as a member of the armed forces that's focused on fighting for the people, who are going to be looking after yourself or your best interest.
Well, I appreciate that. And I should have mentioned earlier on, you were just recently named one of the top 20 under 40 in the nation as far as leadership roles, right? Am I right on that? There's only 20 people in the United States, and you were named one of the top 20 in the United States under 40 in leadership roles. So you're obviously doing something right, I guess, right?
Yeah, the Council of State Government named me one of their top 20 under 40. And then Harvard's Kennedy School of Government, their Institute of Politics, named me one of their emerging leaders.
Well, good. I guess keep it up, keep the ball rolling. We wish you the best of luck, and we hope, as you do, that the military personnel and stuff are paying attention and hopefully coming out to support candidates like you out there. David Nelson, again, House District 18. Thank you for coming on board the program this morning and joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Thanks for coming on board. Okay. We're going to put David back. He can leave at his convenience here. We're looking at just a couple minutes out. I got Mia Costello. I can see her in the green room. I'm going to be with her here in just a hot second. We'll test her audio and everything else to make sure. I just want to go back to the chat room real quick to see what you guys have been talking about in case I haven't seen anything. Good morning, Marette. Thank you for calling in or listening in on YouTube. I see that I see Kevin McCabe. There's a lot of back. You guys in Harold, don't feed the trolls, okay? You guys know, don't feed the trolls, right? They grow. That's how they grow. I just love that. Okay. It looks like we've got everything else. Oh, by the way, and I saw, I think it was Kevin McCabe that mentioned it earlier, said he was looking forward to learning a lot from Donna today. I know Michael Chambers has got that government school thing that they're doing today. And unfortunately, I'm traveling today because they wanted me to come in and they wanted me to MC it and be there with Donna this morning. And unfortunately, I'm traveling to Fairbanks today after the show. And so I'm not going to be able to be there. But Donna Ardwin is going to be teaching today. I think it's just today, or maybe it's today and tomorrow. Somebody can link me in the chat room and tell me there. She's going to be teaching people in I think the Matsu today. it should be amazing, and I would have loved to have been able to be there. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen, but we'll see. We'll see what goes on. Somebody in the chat room can, Kevin or whoever, can drop me the info, or even Donna herself. Donna, I know I saw her earlier in the chat room this morning, and it should be fun. I love having Donna on the program, and we love the fact that here's a woman who got snubbed by the state of Alaska and is still engaged. I love that. All right. Mia Costello is back in the chat room here. So let's go over here and test the old connections to make sure everything is working right and properly. So this is the first time she's joining us on this new format. Good morning, Senator. How are you?
Great. How are you doing this morning, Mike?
I am doing good. Long time no see or hear. So it's good to have you back on the program. We appreciate you coming on board. You all ready for this? We're going to duke it out here. We're going to fight.
Okay.
We're not
Okay.
gonna fight. I'm lying. We're not going to fight. Yep, we're all ready to go, and we're going to talk about the race. And you sound good. You look good. We're ready to get things going on. So be ready. And I know everybody's so nervous about it's a video. You think everybody after COVID would be used to the whole Zoom thing now at this point, right? You'd think they'd all just be all ready to do it. But no, we're going to be jumping back to you here in just a hot second. So I'm going to drop you back into the green room. And some people, it's like Mike Shower. He's like, I can't do that in the morning. But everybody else has been pretty good. Mike Shower is the only knuckle-dragging troglodyte out there right now. He's the only one that can't get things going in the morning. Well, him and Chris Story. Chris Story's like, I can't do that. I can't do that. All right. Donna is in the chat room, and she says today, one day, Shelley Hughes will be there, David Boyle, Jake Libby from The Watchmen, and more. It's all going on today. So that should be good. The Michael Put Up Your Duke show. That just sounds a little conflictual. Conflictual is not actually a word, but confrontational is the word. But we're going to use conflictual. You want to fight? We'll fight. Put up your dukes. Will it be streamed? Tawny asks. That's the Donna Arduin Michael Chambers thing. Will it be streamed? I don't know. It'll be at Evangelo's. Stop by for a cup of coffee. I'm leaving town in an hour and 20 minutes. So I don't know when you guys get started, but we'll have to see. All right. It's conflictionary. Is that really a word? It might be. Joshua Walton's much smarter than I am, so it could possibly be a word. I don't care. This is like Whose Line Is It Anyway, where the rules are made up and the points don't count. I will make up anything I want. That's why my name is on the show. Let's get things going. You ready to do it? The Michael Duke Show. Common sense. Liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Hour 2 dead ahead. Senator Mia Costello, our guest. Let's do this thing. Here we go.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Across the world on the interwebs at michaeldukeshow.com, where you'll pick up the audio-only live stream, links to all of our social media feeds where we simulcast the show, including Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch, and, of course, the podcast, which you can find on Google, Apple, iTunes, Podcasts, Apple Podcast, CastBox, Stitcher, and, of course, my favorite, Spotify. Go out there and do it right now. Subscribe. Just do it because, it's the only time you can tell me what to do. You can fast forward me. You can pause me. You could play me at 1.5 times speed. Somebody said, that's how I listen to your show at 1.5 times speeds all the time. So you're talking like this all the time. Whatever you want to do. It's the only time you can tell me what to do is when you listen on the podcast. All right. Hour 2 of the big radio show today. We are continuing with candidate interviews. We just finished up with David Nelson from House District 18, which you can listen to on the podcast if you missed it. Right now, we're going to jump into it on the Senate side with a candidate that we haven't talked to in quite a while. Candidate for the new Senate District M, Mia Costello, joins us on the program today. We're going to talk about all things legislative. She joins us right now. Good morning, Mia. How are you?
Good morning, Michael. How are you doing today?
I'm obviously had my coffee and I'm ready to go. I'm finer than frog hair, split 4 ways.
Yep.
We're
I've got
ready.
mine.
That's a big cup too. That's a big
special mug. Maybe I'll send you one.
Oh, yeah. See, you got 2 mugs. I know. I mean, I love that. Sometimes it's a 2-fisted morning. That's what happens sometimes. All right, Mia. Well, it's been a while since we've had a chance to chat and catch up. So we got a lot of stuff to talk about this morning. But for those who may not know who Mia Costello, well, first and foremost, I guess we should talk about the new district so people know that you might be their new potential candidate. Let's talk about the new District M. Give us a little bit of a rundown on it, where it is, who it encompasses, and what parts of what district, and then we'll get a little bit into your history.
Okay, sounds good, Michael. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for having me on your show and your listeners. It's always great to join you in the morning. And I know you're Michael and I'm Mia, but it's actually Senate District H. It's okay. The Senate District H. It's Turnagain, Sand Lake, Jewel Lake, parts of Spenard, and we've added Bayshore. 88% of the district is the same as I currently represent. In the new area, it goes south of Campbell Lake to grab Bayshore. So that's the area that I represent and I'm running for.
Okay, good. I mean, look, I can only apologize so many times to people because it takes me 10 years to learn where all the districts are, and then they flip them every time. And I for the next year, I'm confused totally. So it's at least right in the description of the video this morning. It's Senate District H. All right. So Mia Costello, a little bit of your background, who you are, where you came from, and what you've been doing for the folks, the 88% of folks that are in your district now. Give us a little bit of background here.
Okay. Well, just, to dovetail on what we talked about the district, if you land at the Anchorage International Airport, either side of the airplane, if you look out, it's the district that I represent. And I was born and raised in the district, went to the public schools here in Anchorage, and went off to college. And then I came back because I wanted to make Alaska my home where I raised my family. And I have 2 boys who are attending Diamond High School right now. Prior to running for office, I was a high school teacher. I taught at 3 different districts in the state of Alaska, and I also worked for several governors, Governor Hickel and Governor Murkowski. And then I went back to school to get my teaching certificate. I was first elected to the House and represented my neighborhood in the House for 4 years, and I've been representing the neighborhood in the Senate now for 8 years. And I really focus on listening to my constituents. I know that my constituents don't want to pay an income tax, and they also want safe neighborhoods. So I've worked really hard on those 2 issues, and also listening to them about needs that we have in the district. For example, street lighting and water quality studies for drinking water and things like that. So I put a high priority on responding to my emails and phone calls, and then during campaign season, I go door to door and I'm listening to my voters there at the door to hear what they are concerned about. So that's the summary of what I've been up to.
I always like to ask this of candidates, and I don't recall if I've asked you this. We've talked several times, but I don't remember. What exactly made you jump into politics directly? I mean, was there a single aha moment? Was it a cumulative thing? And when exactly did you lose your mind?
Early on, Michael, I actually have been interested in politics really actually ever since I met Don Young when he came to my elementary school when I was very young. And I was very interested in the idea that you represent individuals, you represent people's views in a format where you have to work with others. And so my entire life, I really have been interested in politics. And then I decided to run because the individual who was serving the district, I felt their values weren't aligned with the district as well as they could be. And so I ran, and I unseated an incumbent. That was Bob Book, back when I ran for the House.
You talking about walking door to door in constituencies. I ran for office in Fairbanks, and I served there in the assembly. And for me, one of the most interesting, it's exhausting. Obviously, it's the hardest part of the work, but the walking door to door to me was always the most interesting. Meeting people in their element, talking to them on their own doorstep, getting a lot of, input from people. So as you've gone around to the district, both old and new parts of the district now, I'm interested to hear what people are most concerned about. I mean, PFD, inflation, crime, budgets, ranked choice voting. What are the biggest things that they're talking about to you, and what are they interested in?
So I do spend time walking around and talking to families and individuals at the door. I'd have to say that inflation and the cost of living is really on people's minds. The price of gas is really hurting families, and families are making different choices because of the cost of, filling up their tank with gas. That's certainly, I would say, a very important issue that I hear about. And also, I'm hearing that people really do not like the ranked choice voting system that we have, and they're looking forward to having that return to the system that we've had in the past. So those are two things. Another thing I want to mention is that a lot of homes have video cameras on their doorsteps. So people purchased those because they were concerned about crime. And I was really happy to introduce the repeal for Senate Bill 91, which helped bring Anchorage back to a state of more normalcy that than we had with Senate Bill 91. So.
Yeah, no, that was super contentious. I know that there was a lot of questions on that. Two things, though. I guess going back to the ranked choice voting, do you find people who voted for it and didn't understand what it was for? Did they think it was just about eliminating dark money? Did you find people, or most of the constituents just voted against it and they dislike it? I'm curious. I found people that they said, "Oh yeah, I voted for it because it gets rid of dark money," and I'm like, no, it doesn't. Not really, but it does fundamentally change the voting system and everything. What's the breakdown when you talk to people about ranked choice? Were they never in favor of it, or were they just confused, or did they vote against it? What kind of breakdown are you seeing there?
So what I'm hearing from people is that they really didn't understand that is what they were voting for. I think that that's a concern that you have with the citizen initiative, where it doesn't go through a real thorough process, where like in the legislature, we have hearings, things do take a little longer, but you get a chance to really investigate the impacts that a bill or a law will have. And so many people do not understand that is what they voted for. In fact, some people don't even know that the public was the one that actually put this in place. And so they're asking they're asking me to go back to Juneau and return the system to the system that we had before. And as you know, Michael, I'm actually a target of some of that dark money. Many of my voters and constituents have seen ads targeted against me, and 75% of the funding for that is coming from out of state. And so that's something that is definitely still around.
Right. Well, I think that whole thing was a misinformation campaign. I'm in radio, so I see it. I saw what was going on behind the scenes. I saw the ad copy that was going out, and 90% of the ad copy was all talking about let's eliminate dark money in Alaska, and it wasn't. There was one ad that talked about the ranked choice voting component, and you got 26 pages of instructions in the voter pamphlet for the initiative. I don't think that there's probably maybe a handful of Alaskans that read all 26 pages. I stopped at page 17 because I'm like, this is insane. I'm not doing 26 pages of changes to the Alaska law on a voter initiative. Anyway, I do want to ask about the PFD. Your district may be different than others, but the PFD is a huge issue for many people. I think it ties back into both the inflation and the cost of living. Are your constituents, are they adamant about any kind of PFD? Are they okay with a 50-50 split or 75-25 or full statutory? What are your constituency saying about the PFD?
So as I'm going door to door, and also in the legislative process, when I heard, from people who called my office and talked to me, I do believe that Alaskans look to the legislature and want us to follow the laws that we pass. And so I do hear that individuals would like the dividend, the statutory dividend. And that is why I have been supporting that. And then at the same time, I have voted to change the formula so that it's more sustainable in the long term. So there's a couple options that we're looking at out there, but it does come up at the door. It definitely is something that Alaskans pay attention to. And, that was the intention of the dividend, was to give the public an ability to protect the fund itself by having a dividend. So the dividend itself actually protects the fund, because otherwise I believe the legislature would find a way to spend down that fund. And that fund is very important. It's our future. It generates a lot of revenue for the state, and we use it to pay for government. And so the dividend is a very, very important part of government, and it's very important to the people. I believe it's the people's money. And I don't like it being used as a political football. I would rather the formula generate the amount, and then it goes directly to Alaskans and bypasses the legislature. That's what I would like to see happen. So.
We have a hashtag around here. It's follow the damn law. That should be the hashtag everywhere. A part of the problem, though, one of the points of confliction there is, of course, we have conflicting laws. We have SB 26, which you uniquely were there and part of, and everything else when it went by. And that set up this kind of conflict between a POMV draw and the statutory dividend. And so many people have talked about this. And I know Senator Shower's got a bill, and several other people have got a bill now to look at SB 26 and decide, if we're not going to change the formula in statute and we're just going to ignore it, then maybe we should talk about revoking and removing SB 26, the POMV formula, because again, these are the laws that are at loggerheads. And this is what one side points to. Well, we got to follow this law. Well, we don't got to follow this law, kind of thing. What are your thoughts on the potential repeal of SB 26, the POMV law?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to remember that when the Senate actually sent that bill over to the House, that we did have the dividend within the POMV. And so that was taken out. And so now we have the situation that you're describing. I like the percent of market value approach, because I think it has this line where you're trying to basically spend less than you earn, and so it's always growing your savings and the interest. I do think it's an issue. The dividend is an issue that we've been struggling with for a while, and I would like to have it resolved. I'm not certain a repeal of Senate Bill 26 might be the route. I think that you can actually fold in a calculation, a percentage within that. And we talked in the Senate, in the legislature, about that being a 50-50 split. And I think that the public has come around and seen that might be something that would work for them and for the state.
Would you support the 50-50 split and no further? Because I know there's been a lot of talk now about 75-25 and some other things. Is the 50-50 split what you would support in a POMV? If the POMV continues to exist, would you support a POMV and a 50-50 split of the revenues from that?
I do support that, and I actually have supported that. I have voted for that percentage division. Yes.
Good. All right. Senator Mia Costello is our guest, candidate for Senate District H in the Senate. I got it right. We're going to continue with her here in just a second. We're bumping up against the break, so we got to go. We'll be back with Mia Costello answering some more questions. And then at the end of the show, if we got time, we might take a few phone calls and more. I don't know. We'll see. The Michael Duke Show. It's common sense, it's liberty-based, and it's free thinking. It's radio right here. We continue with Mia Costello right after these messages. Don't go anywhere.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes,
allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, we're in the break right now with Mia Costello. We got a few minutes here. Mia, I like to change gears a little bit in the commercial break so we don't do repeats for all the people who are listening to the podcast at 1.5 times speed. So you mentioned something earlier that I talked about several times, which of course is the I guess I would say the crisis theater of the PFD. You've mentioned it. I've mentioned it. Everybody seems to want to talk about it. This fact that they bat the PFD around like a wiffle ball in the legislature. It sucks up all the oxygen in the room. It allows them to use time compression as a weapon near the end of the session because all they've done is talk about the PFD all year. And now we've really got to get the budget done. So do whatever we say or else we're going to run out and the state's going to lock down. And I feel like that there are people in the legislature, especially those who are in leadership positions. I'm talking about chairs and presiding officers and things like that. And some of the behind the scenes folks, especially the old guard, who are happy to let the crisis continue or happy to let the PFD continue to become an issue because it makes it very easy to manipulate the fiscal dealings of the state and gives them the kind of that power. If we had solved the PFD issue, we'd have to face the facts that there's some real problems in the states financially, and nobody wants to address that. They'd rather bat that around. Am I wrong, do you think?
Well, I don't want to say you're wrong. I do think that it all started when Governor Walker vetoed the dividend. And so up until that point, the dividend was really not something that we discussed. It wasn't a part of the budget discussions because it's really separate. So the dividend is entirely separate from the budget. It's something that is directly tied to the people. It's the people's money. It's the people's dividend. And when Governor Walker vetoed it, that's when we started this annual discussion where it's up in the air until the 11th hour. And you're right. If you're co-chair of finance and you're in that position, then you set the dividend amount and you send it to the floor. And then that's where you see all the amendments come up and we're voting on the floor. That never happened before Governor Walker vetoed it. And so I'd like to return to the days where it's just simply a formula that people know, what it's going to be. And we start talking about things like crime and
right. Well, one of the things the Walker administration did too, which was kind of subtle for many people, was that they changed how the dividend is accounted for. Right. It used to be a simple shall transfer. It used to be just a simple pass through. Mm-hmm. It wasn't counted as income or general fund money or anything else. It was a shall transfer from the earnings reserve to boom. It was done. But then under the Walker administration, they started accounting for it in their budgets as general fund revenue in, and then general fund, they counted it as an expenditure. So they changed the whole flavor of the whole thing. I would like to see it going back. It's one of the things that I'm disappointed that Governor Dunleavy didn't tackle was putting that back the way that it was supposed to be, which was shall transfer. No income, doesn't hit the books in any other way. Here's where it is. Governments can still take their half out of the earnings reserve, but the people's money should be transferred.
And that's something I also support. I mean, obviously, I've mentioned it several times. I do think that we've looked at some constitutional amendments that put the dividend in the Constitution anywhere from there shall be a dividend as prescribed by law. And so that, you make that more of a direct line to the people. Bill Wielechowski did bring a case before the state, and the judges ruled that it is an appropriation for the legislature, which I think compounded the problem. And I don't necessarily agree with that. I like the idea that it's sacrosanct, it's separate, there's a firewall, and we shouldn't be discussing whether or not a program happens and then the dividend will be affected by it, because the dividend is something entirely different. And then government should operate within the means that we've set out, for the government programs.
I would wholeheartedly agree with that, and I'd like to see that discussed further in the legislature. All right, we are coming back here to it. Here we're about 20 seconds out. Mia Costello is our guest. We're going to continue our discussions on this and more when we return. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like and share, like and follow. Don't follow, just share. That's all I'm saying today. Just share. Here we go. Jumping back into it. Let's do it. Okay, We're ready to go here. We're jumping back into it here with Mia Costello, who is a GOP candidate for Senate in District H. She and I are going to talk a little bit more here. I want to finish up our discussions on the PFD, and then we're going to move on to some other issues of budgetary means and things like that. We were just talking during the break about the POMV and the PFD and everything else. One of the big talking points, of course, is this discussion of putting the PFD formula in the Constitution. And I know some people have advocated to put it in the Constitution to say, I think, as you just said, PFD shall be done as provided by law, which is kind of more of a broad generic statement. And others have argued that what we need to do is actually enshrine the PFD formula itself, because we've seen exactly the legislature has a disdain for the law. They have the ability to change it, but they don't. So they just ignore the law, which I think is a dangerous precedent, quite honestly. And I would like to see the actual formula itself enshrined in the law, because it's a lot harder to ignore if it's constitutional versus statutory. What's your position on putting it into the putting the PFD into the Constitution?
Michael, so any constitutional amendment will go before the people. I definitely am in favor of placing in the Constitution that there shall be a dividend as prescribed by law. And I think deciding on what that formula is going to be a little more challenging, but I would be willing to be, I'm open to that. I would listen to my constituents on that issue. But again, any constitutional change would go before the people. And so it's definitely something that would be a discussion with Alaskans about whether or not we want to go to that length where we put the actual formula into the Constitution itself.
The formula's worked for 40 years, and up until the point where Bill Walker modified it, that's when the rails came off the bus, so to speak, or the wheels, not rails, because buses don't have rails, but you know what I mean. So it's interesting. I would like to see a statutory formula actually enshrined, because then there's no shenanigans. My fear, and you've been in the legislature long enough to see some of these things happen, my fear is that if you put in a verbiage that basically says it shall be paid as prescribed by law, well, we can ignore what we want to ignore if it's statutory, right? I mean, I think that's the danger here.
It is a concern, and that's, I think, where you've seen the trust erode when the legislature is not following the law. We've had efforts to change the law, to change the formula to make it more sustainable, like the 50-50 approach, which I know many of my colleagues support. And then, interestingly enough, the people who want to have it, change every year, they actually refrain from voting for that, that formula. So your comment about individuals wanting to go down and use the dividend as something that they can manipulate and change, I think is eroding the trust with the public. And I think we have to gain that trust back. And the way that we do it is we put in statute that formula and we follow it. And so that's why I have been following that statutory formula, because that's the law. And I believe that as lawmakers, we really have we are the ones who should be first following the law and setting that example.
Mia Costello is our guest candidate for Senate District H. Let's move on to the rest of the budget. Obviously, as you said, inflation, cost of living. I mean, I drive a Mini Cooper. It cost me $72 to fill up my Mini Cooper the day before yesterday. I mean, it's crazy. People are worried. And yet we look at the size and scope of government, and many of us think, wow. So in Mia Costello's mind, is the size and scope of government in the state of Alaska too big, too small, or just right?
Well, I think, I do think government's too big, and I think that we're always looking for efficiencies. The challenge that we have, of course, is that the drivers of government spending are formula driven. And so when we look at reducing, the government spend, we have to really drill down into the different programs, which is why I support zero-based budgeting, where you build the budget each year rather than have a budget that's essentially what you had from the year before and make minor changes. And so I believe that process is really important. I've also supported audits of all of the departments. I think those audits are incredibly valuable. We go down and we look at every single dollar that is spent and whether or not it's effective. And also, we see that there, especially during COVID, we had a lot of workers who decided not to continue working. And I think that if we don't have to fill positions, we shouldn't necessarily fill them just to be filled. So I think there are some things that we can do. And I think that discussion, of course, it starts with the governor introducing the budget on December 15th. And so we then take it and we really scrub it really well. But it is challenging, Michael, to find those efficiencies, and we're working very hard. One of the largest spend is with education, and I know there's a lot of dissatisfaction with the results that we're getting in education, and so I think that's something we can take a look at, is that formula. It's gonna take us rolling up our sleeves, but that formula, I think, does deserve a second look.
I mean, I think zero-based budgeting is a great idea. My other alternative suggestion had been that we should have a budget. The budget cycle should be similar to the PFD, that any budget should be based on a 5-year rolling average of what our previous 5 years of revenue was. That would give you a closer look at not what you want to spend, but what you actually took in, a 5-year average of that. So if we have one low year, guess what? Your budget goes down to start at that point. But zero base would be fine as well. I'm all about that. And you mentioned the formulas. The formulas are important because, like you said, those are locked in, and they immediately, here's your free pass to begin with, and then anything else on top of that is gravy. And education obviously folds into that. We see the talking points now. The new talking point for many campaigns is schools have been underfunded. The formula is broken, and we got to fix it because we just haven't been funding our school. Now, they never talk about that the base student allocation is the base, and they've spent hundreds of millions of dollars beyond the base student allocation in these past years. I mean, education is the second largest item in the budget. We have continual declining school enrollment. We have continual declining school performance academically. We're in the bottom 50th. We're like 49 and 50th for math, reading, science, the whole thing. 1 in 4 students don't even graduate, and those that do graduate, most of them have to take remedial courses like things in math to be able to even get into 100-level college classes. So as an educator, as a former educator, and looking at all this stuff, I mean, we have to open up the formulas, we have to adjust it, and we have to address things like declining enrollment, yet continual ever asks for more money, and the fact that the achievement and the product that they're delivering is, subpar is an understatement, I think.
I mean, definitely, there's a lot of concern about the results not being where we want them to be. And I think what we're also seeing is after COVID, a lot of families are choosing not to place their students in public schools, and they're choosing other options, which I'm a huge fan of parents being able to have options for their students. And so the formula is driven off of the student population. And so when we see a drop in the enrollment, then the formula will result in less dollars going towards that, towards public education. I was encouraged by a bill that we passed this last session called the Alaska Reads Act. And that was introduced as a bipartisan bill. And it uses basically what we know about teaching reading to students that actually works. And so we're training teachers to teach reading using the methods that are considered, state of the art, so that no child will be moved from grade to grade without, being able to read, which is really important. And as far as our math goes and science, I'm a huge fan of vocational and technical education, hands-on learning, so that students are learning math and science through things like robotics and all of the different programs that we have. As you go further in your career, we have King Tech High School, which is, I think, an excellent option for students. You can graduate from King Tech with some degrees and certifications in hand, so that when you graduate, you can go right into the job market. And so I think there are some things that we know work, and I think we need to focus on offering education in a method that, gets those results, gives kids something that they can do in a job environment when they graduate, or if they want to go on to college, they can use that background, in their college career.
So, I guess what you're saying, and I just want to kind of simplify what you just said. I mean, we need to fundamentally change the way we're teaching. I mean, the direct, because it used to be, and it historically has always been, it's always the path to college. But we're finding more and more that what we need is more people in the technical trades. What we're finding is that college students go to college, they get a degree, and 70% of them never get a job in their field of study that they got the pigskin for. And so, I think that needs to fundamentally change, and that all needs to revolve around, again, the idea of funding. I mean, again, we're spending ever increasing amounts. You mentioned the homeschooling. My question is, and I agree, it's the one silver lining out of the pandemic, is that people discovered that it wasn't as scary and spooky to homeschool your kids as everybody was making it out to be. Mostly the school districts and the NEA and everybody else was saying, oh, that's only smart people can do that, kind of thing, So my question is, should we be addressing this through school choice, school vouchers, the backpack funding mechanism where the money follows the student instead of just going straight to the school? I mean, should those be the things that we're talking about to make the school more efficient and to deliver better outcomes?
Well, first of all, I do think it's important to recognize that parents are the students' first teachers. Our families are always learning from the parents and what we do, what we talk about at the dinner table, including vacations or things that you do as a family, and you're always learning. And so I think it's important to recognize that the family and the parents are really integral in the learning process. And I do support parents having choices. I mean, even in the Anchorage School District, you look around and parents have tremendous choice in terms of language immersion programs. We have, Russian, German, Spanish, Japanese immersion programs, and I think these are the types of programs that give parents that choice. In terms of homeschooling, I have a lot of respect for the parents who choose homeschooling, and a lot of parents actually do a hybrid model where their student will go to school, the traditional school, for half the day, and then they're also homeschooling in programs, that they feel are important. And so I think you have a lot of options. The legislature also has passed, and I have supported, high schoolers being able to take classes at the university level as part of their their high school career. I think that's, important for those students who are accelerated and may not be challenged or have classes in the high school building that, that are meeting their needs. And I also support King Tech. I think it's a phenomenal program. Students are bused there for part of the day, or some students attend full time. They learn about all types of things, and they learn hands-on skills. And Michael, one thing that people say all the time is, oh, most kids go to college. And the truth is that most students don't go to college. Most students are looking for jobs right out of high school. And we, as the ones, and with the responsibility of providing those opportunities for students, we need to recognize that and provide students all kinds of opportunities so that when they graduate from high school, they have an idea of their career path, and even better, that they have something in hand that they can go and actually get a job. As Labor and Commerce Chair, I had a lot of the trades come to the committee and present for the public different options that are available for training. You can actually get on the job training and get paid while you're learning a trade. And I think that's really wonderful for students. Yesterday, we had a presentation from the mining community. Mining jobs are phenomenal jobs. They pay really well. There's all kinds of mines in Alaska. And, that's another career opportunity that young people can pursue.
And I guess my original question got lost in there somewhere, because I'm still asking, I mean, should we be looking at new choice methods? I mean, you've just outlined some choice methods, but obviously there's an appetite now for alternative to brick and mortar schools. So should we be looking at some kind of voucher system or a choice or backpack funding? Are those things that you would explore and support the exploration of?
I think that we should always be searching for better ways to deliver education so that we get better results. And so, yes, I am open to all kinds of opportunities that parents and students can pursue. So, yes, I'm interested in that innovation.
Mia, if you're willing, I'm going to keep you over for one more segment to the top of the hour. Is that okay? Okay. I got down in the weeds with you there, and that's always a mistake on my part because we've run up against the clock, and I still got more questions. I've got questions. We're going to continue with Mia Costello here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We're going to be back with more in just a second with Mia Costello, GOP candidate for Senate District H, as in hello. We're going to be back with more right after this.
Your mental suppository. The Michael Duke Show.
Okay. We're back. Okay, Mia, what yeah, I'm sorry. I was trying to pull that question out of you, and we got far afield there. But I mean, I agree. But I mean, I guess let me ask you this, because you said something about, most kids aren't going to college. But isn't that? But I guess isn't that the really the societal message, and has been for the last 40. I mean, I remember I'm 53 years old. All right. So I remember my dad was just like, college. You got to go to college. You got to do, that's how you're going to be successful. That's how you're going to, make. And that was the thing. I went to college for one semester, and that was it. I was done. I was like, this is, for me, this is ridiculous. I want to go do something else. But the mantra is go to school, get a degree, get a diploma, do good, go to college, get a degree, you'll be successful. And what we've seen is, again, statistically, the vast majority of students who graduated from college over the last 40 years have not gotten a job in their field of study. I mean, maybe 25% of them. And it's kind of like we've created this education industrial complex where, we've got to go to college. And of course, then we saw the government step in and try and mandate things and fund things. And then, of course, colleges jack their rates up. And it's kind of become this whole thing of everybody's got to go to college. And what has happened is all of our trades, we have a huge demand for trades. And over 40 years, it became almost looked down upon to be a welder, a mechanic, a ground on the ground level engineer or construction guy or something like that. Yet those people make six-figure incomes without the $300,000 college debt load and 4 years of time not wasted, but you know what I mean? So, I mean, shouldn't there be a fundamental shift in Europe, and I'm not saying that their system is perfect, but in Europe, they're already deciding in middle and high school where these kids are already making decisions on where they're going. Am I going to college? Am I going to trade school? And they don't have those kind of same problems. They have high-paying trades, and it's a focus in their high school years instead of this add-on in the final year or whatever that we see in a lot of what we're doing today. Shouldn't there be a fundamental shift there?
I think there should be. And I was actually just about to mention the same comment you did, which is that in Europe, in some countries, they actually choose a path fairly early, whether or not you're going to go into the trades or into some other career. And young people are really savvy. I think within the school, if you spend a day in the high school, I think you will perhaps get a different message that there are other options other than college. I think that your comment that society puts pressure on young people to go to college. There are wonderful jobs, great paying jobs in the trades, and you can start doing those before you even graduate. I've been very excited about opportunities for young people to learn welding. And, it's not just, talking about what's going on in the schools, but when you look at the Department of Labor and the list of jobs that they say are going to be needed, we don't have enough jobs, individuals in Alaska to fill those jobs. And so we need to be growing our own, and we need to be making sure that we have those trades, populated with young people, so that they can have a family here and live here. I mean, one of the things that I hear from people is that they want their children to be able to live in Alaska and raise families here because they want they want their grandchildren here and they want to have their families here. So it's all very important. Those years in school really can make a difference in your life and what you choose to do.
Yeah, no, I mean, exactly. And again, there's whole new vistas opening up. I mean, you've got these things that they call various names, but I've heard them under the names of like rocket courses, right? Coding rocket courses, where over the course of 3 months or 4 months, you pay $6,000 or $7,000. You get into this course. There was a gal that I talked to here a couple of years ago. She'd come out of high school. She had some interest in coding. She didn't want to go to college. She did this rocket course. I think it cost her $7,000, $8,000, $9,000. It was 4 months. She got out of the course and was offered a job making $80,000 a year. And within the next 18 months, she was making $120,000 a year right out of high school with only the $10,000 that she paid for the course. It wasn't a $300,000 debt load. But what a lot of times those are just not talked about. It's this pathway to college always. Hey, doctors need to go, engineers need to go, scientists need to go. I guess even lawyers need to go to college, right? But does everybody else need to go unless it's for one specific course? Do they need a graduate degree to make those things happen? And I think that's the bigger question that everybody should be asking right now. And I'd love for you to respond, but I've got 20 seconds. So I don't know, unless you just want to say, I agree, yes and no, then we're good to go.
I agree, Michael.
There you go. That's what I love. Put everybody in rocking chairs. Everybody agrees with me. All right. We're getting ready to jump back into it. Mia Costello is our guest. One final segment. We'll be diving into it. And so make sure that you, share and like the show. Let's get it going on. Final thoughts, The Michael Duke Show. All right. One final segment here on the program. Mia. Oh, I forgot to push the button. Sorry. Mia Costello, our guest. And we're finishing up. We got a little bit long-winded there. I started asking more questions than I should have. So I want to get down here. Final segment. We got about 8-9 minutes. And so, we talked about education. Obviously, the size and scope of government is too big. Mia's agreed with that. We've got this. The first largest item is Medicaid spending, which, of course, is exacerbated by Bill Walker's expansion of Medicaid, where they took every optional program. How would you find efficiencies, in that? I mean, should we be looking at eliminating some of the elective programs? Should we be looking at Medicaid fraud? Should we be looking at the relationship between some doctors building a whole business model on doing nothing but that and to being dependent on government money? What's your take on the Medicaid component of the budget, since it is the largest by far component?
Well, of all the things you mentioned, I think all of the above. I mean, certainly one of the things that we need to do is to make sure that the providers are paid in a timely manner, because otherwise providers are not going to want to take Medicaid patients. And so when you have a system where it's taking very long for the providers to receive reimbursement, that is something that I believe government has a responsibility to improve. And I think that we can do that. We recently split the Department of Health into two separate health and social services into two departments. And I believe the intention there was to make things more efficient. In terms of the fraud, I definitely believe that we need to have a very robust anti-fraud programs throughout the state of Alaska. Nobody is wanting fraud, because it just drives the cost up, and it undermines the integrity of any program if there's fraud within the program. So I do think that fraud is something that the legislature and the executive branch should be supporting individuals who are in the departments looking at that. And I do think, Michael, that with it being, the largest budget spend that we have, it's important that it's efficient and that we are doing things that are what's called best practices. So if other states are having, results that we actually want to mimic, I think that we should be looking at what are those other states doing that are best practices that we can implement here in Alaska.
What about removing, again, some of these? We have 270,000 Alaskans are in some way, shape, or form on some form of Medicaid or medical assist. That's 1/3 of the state. And of course, a lot of that comes from that expansion of taking every elective option that we can get. Shouldn't we be paring that down, especially since now we're seeing that the federal government is going to start reducing their spend on that, and the state is going to be on the hook for that moving forward? Shouldn't we be eliminating some of those, add-on programs, and of course, not allowing elective services to be done, inside that program?
Well, one thing to keep in mind is we knew at expansion that the federal government was going to slowly back out and the state would have to take on more responsibility. So I do believe that we have too many programs that, that are not the base, program. And I think we need to just look and see which ones are ones that fit the state of Alaska and ones that we want, and then which ones, aren't best suited for the clientele that we have here in Alaska. Because when you have the Cadillac version, I mean, you're going to be paying for it. And so I think you're right. We need to be not necessarily offering every single one of those in our program.
Fiscal discipline, fiscal planning. I mean, this is what we need, and is what we've been lacking in the state for many years. Long-term fiscal issues. Obviously, we seem to be running from one election to the next. We're never looking at a 5 or a 10 or a 15 or a 20-year plan. The Fiscal Policy Working Group took place over the course of last summer, and they came forward, a very separate group of people with different philosophies, but they came together unanimously with an idea, a group of points, 10 or 12 points, that said we need to take a look at all these holistically. We can't just pick one out. This is the plan that we've come up with as a roadmap. And I thought it was surprisingly good. I was very surprised. And then the leadership just put it in a drawer and said, thank you for your service, and moved along. Have you looked at the Fiscal Policy Working Group map and plan, and would you support it as a roadmap for moving forward for fiscal stability in the state?
So I have looked at the plan. While I am, appreciative of the efforts that went in from the members who sat on that, there are things in that plan that I simply cannot support and do not support. And one of those is increasing oil taxes. I think that we should make Alaska open for business. We should have an environment where we're not raising taxes on the industry, but instead we're reaping the benefits of an environment that is stable, because we have a stable tax regime. So I'm not in support of that portion of the plan. And I also am not in support of an income tax. I don't believe that hardworking Alaska families should be paying an income tax. We don't have the population base to even generate significant amount of money from an income tax. And so my opponent actually has introduced an income tax, but I have been fighting consistently against an income tax. I think if you look at the resource base that we have, I think that Alaska is blessed with all kinds of natural resources. And if we manage those well, and we have an environment that attracts business, that is the direction we should be looking for generating revenue. And when our permanent fund grows, the interest on that fund grows too. And so that's why it's important to have a spending cap, so that we are not, overreaching in terms of our spending, and so that we can continue to grow our savings.
So, I mean, I guess that leaves only one option. If you're not looking for new revenues, or even looking to discuss new revenues, then the only option at that point is to cut. But we've seen that there's no political will to cut in the state right now. We couldn't possibly cut. We were told by the Senate Finance Co-Chair, couldn't possibly cut. We've cut as much as we're to the bone. No more cuts. Can't happen. And so the option is, and as you said, we don't have the population base to fully fund government on taxation, even a portion of it. And the Fiscal Policy Working Group for sales taxes is what they were talking about, using the South Dakota model. But so quickly, what are the other options then? I mean, is it just a cut? Because the cuts only approach, while I support that, historically, we can look back and see it's got a track record. It dies on the thing every time because there's no political will to get it done. So what is the solution?
Well, the solution is to develop our resources. And if you look at oil production, we instituted some, friendly laws that made investment and exploration very achievable. And so we're reaping the benefits of that. And so our oil industry is something that we should be looking to. And we're seeing right now, our president is going and trying to get OPEC to produce more. And they're saying, well, we should be producing that in our country, on our soil in Alaska. That's what we have. And so when we do produce oil, we do bring in revenue. And so I think that is a bright star in our future. And I think that mining is also a bright star in our future. And, you need minerals in order to have a computer and build cars. And we have those right here in Alaska. So I think that's what we should be focusing on.
Well, those are all long-term goals that I agree with. The problem is they're all long-term. It takes 5, 10, 15 years to develop all the things you're talking about. We're in a fiscal crunch now. And so I think we need to address these things. I don't have enough time to get deeper into this, but I want to give you your final say here. So elevator pitch time, about 60, 90 seconds here. Why should people vote for you versus your opponent? How do they find out more about you? Give us the run. It's all you.
Well, thanks. And there are some fields that are coming online within the next year. So that's really great news, Michael. But thank you for having me on your show and your listeners. I know they're very dedicated listeners, and I appreciate your time this morning, too. I'm Mia Costello. I was born and raised in the district that I'm serving right now, and I'm a conservative candidate for reelection. I have been listening to my constituents. I've been working for safe neighborhoods, preventing taxes, and putting forward policies that help make Alaska a better place to live, things like Uber and Lyft, and helping with our economy. My website is votemia.com, and we're always looking to raise more money to help spread our message. I would really love to have your vote on November 8th, and my cell phone is 227-5276. You are welcome to call me directly or text me, and I would love to have a conversation. Thank you.
Folks, out of time for today. We'll see you tomorrow. Oh, we're right up against it. Boom, right up against it there. All right, Mia. I love to give everybody, you just saw it with David Nelson, I give everybody a final bite at the apple because now we're not up against the clock. It's just you, me, and 85 of our closest friends on Facebook and YouTube and the internet. So final thoughts, anything I didn't hit on, something I didn't touch on, or some subject that you wanted to get deeper on real quick? We got about 2 or 3 minutes here. I'll give you the chance to redirect, so to speak.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, so my race is going to be a really tough race, and it's going to really impact the organization and the Senate. And so it's a really important race, and that's why we're working really hard. I do think that something that's important that I hear a lot about is that legislators are accessible to the constituents, and I work really hard to make myself accessible. I walk door to door during the campaign and listen to individuals. I give out my cell phone number. I answer my emails and phone calls. And so I think that's really important, because when we go to Juneau and we're not in the neighborhoods walking around and talking to individuals, sometimes we can feel like our legislature is far away. But, I want everyone to know that, it's really important for me to represent you, that I listen to you. And those are the reasons why I've done the things I've done, like introduce the repeal to Senate Bill 91. I've been fighting against an income tax. I've been supporting the statutory dividend while at the same time looking at a sustainable formula. And then I've supported projects that help the district that you ask for in the budget, things like lighting for our streets and water quality studies for our drinking water and things like that. So it's been a real honor to represent everyone in the legislature in my area, and I'd be really honored to return to Juneau and continue to fight for you in Juneau.
Your final comment brought something to mind. I don't know as you and I have ever talked about the Charter of Changes, which is my four changes that I think would make Alaska better, make it move forward into the future. And the 4 changes, changing the players, obviously, is the first one, where we would change out those, you can't have the same group of folks doing the same thing and expect different results. The second one, though, you just touched on, and that is changing the venue. I have advocated that what we need to do is move the legislative session onto the road system, not the Capitol, leave the Capitol in Juneau, but put the legislative sessions on the road system. But like you said, because we are so far removed from our legislative process physically that most people can't participate. And, if you put it somewhere on the road system, and I don't care where, Willow, Fort Greely, Anchorage, Wasilla, Kenai, K Beach, I don't care. But somewhere on the road system, 85% of Alaskans could climb into a car and within just a few hours be standing in front of their legislators. And I think that's a huge thing. I think we should have that accessible to all Alaskans. And I know they say, well, electronically, blah, blah. There's a whole bunch of difference if somebody's patting you on the back or poking you in the chest for something that you're doing as a legislator, and they're standing right in front of you. Would you agree that getting the legislative session on the road system would be a good thing?
Absolutely, Michael. I think that the legislature being closer to the people is always going to be good. And it's, in fact, one of the reasons why I went to Wasilla when the governor called a special session in Wasilla, which was out of Juneau. Not all of my colleagues went to Wasilla, but I felt like, I took an oath to the Constitution, and that's where the session was called. So yes, I was looking forward to that interaction with the public there. And I think it's a great idea. And I think you're right, that we could keep the Capitol there, but we could have the legislature have more hearings in communities where people can testify in person and see the process and be a part of the process face to face, because I think that is a critical part of our state government, and we work really hard to try to keep in touch with our voters, but it's always hard when the meetings are down there in Juneau. So I agree.
All right, Mia Costello, thank you for coming on board. Again, you can go over to votemia.com and get all your intel and info that you need, and she's given you her phone number if you want to call her and contact her. I mean, this is a pivotal race, whether you agree on every one of Mia's positions or not. Your alternative is worse. I would just put it that way. We need to try, as dysfunctional as the Senate majority was last session, it would be even more dysfunctional if it was controlled by the Democrats or some kind of coalition. So I think it's important to support the candidates, rank the red in that way, and get all that done. So Mia, thank you for coming on board. I appreciate it. And we look forward to talking to you more often. I know you're always busy. You got something going on, but we look forward to talking to you more often. It's I hope that we treated you gently enough that you don't feel abused here on the program.
Thank you, Michael.
All right. Mia Costello, our guest for today. Thank you for being part of the show. We appreciate that. All right, folks. That's it for today. Tomorrow is Firearms Friday. And we're going to be I'm going to be at Fairbanks. Going to be in Fairbanks tomorrow. That's what we're doing. We're going to Fairbanks tomorrow. Or today, and we're going to be there tomorrow. We'll be doing the show remotely, so I hope you guys are all ready for that. We look forward to seeing you then. And if you're in the Fairbanks area tomorrow, or this weekend, stop by and see us. We'll be at the Go Winter Expo at the Carlson Center, Saturday and Sunday. And then we'll be back here bright and early on Monday. My God, it's going to be horrible. I'm going to drive all night, be back here. All right, well, enough about my problems. We will see you guys tomorrow for Firearms Friday. Thanks for coming in and joining us. Don't forget to like and share and follow the show page and ring the bell on you. I know I said I wasn't going to do it, but do it. You people, I can't get you to ring the damn bell on YouTube and hit subscribe. All right. I'll see you. Bye. I've done enough damage for today.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.